Our scripture for this evening comes from 1 Peter chapter 1, and we'll look at verse 1, verse 6, and verse 7. Again, 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 1, verse 6, and verse 7. One of the things that I deal with from time to time is sciatic pain. As a result of going to therapy, I was once put on a spinal decompression bench. I didn't know what that was at the time, but I certainly will never forget what it is. They strapped me on this table, explained to me that this mechanism would pull me, and from the bottom and from the top, the middle section fell out, and it was designed to relieve pressure and help to give me some type of relief in the sciatic pain. When that middle section fell out and that thing went to pulling on me, I went to hollering, and I told them folk they had to get me up off of that thing because it was god-awful pain, and I would do any kind of therapy, but don't ever put me back on that spinal decompression bench. Now, if that worked for somebody else, great, but it did not work for me. But it made me ask a question that I'm sure that you ask. Why does what we need to help us have to hurt? For example, physical therapy. You go to physical therapy and sometimes you feel worse than when you got there, but that's supposed to help you. Dental work, all that drilling and all of that hitting nerves, and it's supposed to help you, but it hurts. You ever been to professional counseling, wanting to feel better about depression or just being in a dark place? Sometimes it really hurts when you go to counseling because they delve into your psyche, and you have to address and deal with very painful things that are deep-seated. Sometimes we find ourselves wanting to be helped, but we have to hurt in order to get the help. And this seems to be the same case with our faith. We want our faith to be stronger. We want to go to another level in our faith. And we find that our faith has to be challenged. It has to hurt. We have to go through pain in order for our faith to work. Let's try to understand why that is and what it would take to understand the benefits of our faith being tried. In 1 Peter chapter 1 and verse number 1, it says, Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. I drop down to verse 6 as he's talking to these various groups of people. Wherein you greatly rejoice, though now for a season, if need be, you are in heaviness through manifold temptations, that the trial of your faith, being much more precious than of gold that perishes, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ. Let's give a biblical context to the fact that we go through things and we experience the pain of life. Trying to get our faith to be what it wants to be is often an unpleasant experience. It's like counseling, it's like physical therapy, it's like dental work. Ultimately, we hope for some good, but Lord, going through it can certainly bring back some painful memories. As we look at this particular passage, there are some things to point out. I wanted you to look at verse number 1 to show you that, number 1, you are not the first person and you are not the last person to go through something. As we see here, there were people who were scattered as a result of the stoning of Stephen and the persecution of the early church. The people began to scatter, which ultimately meant the church was able to be blessed, to be planted in various areas. But as a result of this scattering, it brought about trials and tribulations for the people. Depending on where they were in their faith, would certainly say how they responded in their faith. But every indication is that it was a challenge to them. That's why Peter writes to them. But not only is this not your first experience, and not only are you not the first person, this isn't God's first time. So whatever you're going through, you need to take comfort in knowing that God has seen it all before. As you look at verse number 6, he talks about something that we need to understand, and that is it's very natural for us to be tempted to a sinful reaction. Let me say that again. It is natural to be tempted to a sinful reaction. Though we are spirit beings, we are having a human experience. And it does not make you less that something in you wants to react and respond to life in a way that's inconsistent with godliness. That's what temptation is all about. And that's why he talks about in heaviness through manifold temptations. In the proper context, those people were wanting to retaliate and respond in a way that certainly would be beneath their calling as a Christian. But what we have to also recognize is the value in verse 6 in the very first part that help us to overcome the temptations. He says, wherein ye greatly rejoice. Now, this is a hard phrase to understand if you're reading the King James Version. But in very simple terms, what he is mentioning here is that though you are going through something now, there is joy ahead. After a while, when you get through this, there is something on the other side of the pain. There is something on the other side of the problem. So in order for us to get through what we must go through, we can't stay focused on what we're going through. We have to look ahead to where we'll get if we endure. Someone said, no pain, no gain. Betty Wright said it eloquently in her singing. But as we think about rejoicing, we're not rejoicing in what we are dealing with. We rejoice in what we will accomplish and what we will become. Another important thing to look at in verse number 6 is not only the fact that we can look forward to joy that's ahead if we endure, if we don't give up, if we don't wave the white flag of surrender. But notice a word there that should change our lives and our whole perspective. It's the word season. In verse 6, he says, though now for a season. Though now for a season. No matter what season we're in, spring, summer, fall, or winter, we know that each season is but temporary. And we have to be reminded that the experiences of life are but for a season. You may be going through a season of pain, a season of problems, a season of headaches, a season of heartaches. But you cannot be discouraged with the thought that what you are dealing with has to be a permanent reality. You have to see your trials and your tribulations as simply a temporary, seasonal experience. It is simply a time in which faith is being tried, faith is being tested, character is being built, virtue is being established. It's just but a season. We understand the concept of seasons because we know there is fire season. We know there's hurricane season, there's tornado season. Beloved, there are problem seasons, there are headache seasons, there are heartache seasons. What we're going through is but for a season. And then verse number 7 tells us that the trial of our faith, being much more precious than of gold, perishes, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ. We're going through the season because God is trying to make us. So the next time you experience a trial, trouble, or tribulation, remember God is not trying to break you. God is trying to make you. And though it is overwhelming, have some joy, or at least look forward to the joy that's ahead. Whatever your discomfort, whatever your problem, it's just for a season. Sometimes what we need to help us, we have to go through a little hurt. Physical therapy hurts. Counseling hurts. Dental work hurts. But just remember, no pain, no gain. This has been another installment of A Few Minutes with the Minister.